Hello, everyone. I'm Mark Dorenkamp with Brownfield Ag News, welcoming you to our Pioneer Harvest Hangout featuring Andy Ross and Don Kyle. Well, this part should be fun, kind of peeling back the curtain here with Pioneer. And as we talk about research and development, Don, I'm not sure where's the best place to begin, but I know it's a pretty impressive R&D department. Where do you think is a good starting point?
I guess I would want to start to talk about the quality of people that I get to work with every day, because I think foundationally, they're the difference makers in the equation. Sometimes Andy and I get to go out and tell a really positive message on their behalf. This is one of those opportunities, and I don't want to overlook that opportunity today to say, we got some great people that work as part of our local research stations that go out and put a lot of effort into finding really good products and capturing the data. And they're the difference makers in my opinion. I mean, we get to work with some great scientists as well, and collaboratively we come up with some new ways to do breeding and solve problems. And those people really make a difference.
Andy, the science behind plant breeding, I would imagine it's difficult sometimes to communicate in a relatable way to people how you go about the work that you do. But when you're talking to somebody about how Pioneer goes about doing this, how do you articulate that?
That is a very good question. You put me on the spot to try to do it right now. So, it is really hard to articulate what Dawn and I do and all the teams that we work with, because there is a lot of science involved in it. But I would go all the way back and say, at the very fundamentals, we're just looking for a better product that's better than what we have. And so the first thing is, can it yield more? And then can we put those agronomics around that to make it better? And the best way to say is we make thousands and thousands of new experimental soy varieties or corn hybrids every year, and just go through and measure them. Are they as good as what we currently selling to growers? And, to be honest, 99% of the stuff that we come up with, it's not as good as what we're selling. And so we just put enormous pressure on finding that 1% that's going to be better. And then we go again and we do it all over again the next year. The great thing about our jobs is we're not just breeding, the next round. We have like 7 or 8 rounds of germplasm development and that we're working on at any one time. And so you're truly working for, part of our job is you're working for what soybean varieties or corn hybrids are we going to give to the growers next year. And we're working really closely with our product agronomists and field agronomists. But on the other end of the spectrum, we're working with using genomic data to find the best 100 things out of 10,000 things to put out in the field that a customer may see 7 years from now. So it really is an exciting job to be able to do all those dynamics and all those different pieces. But it is really, really hard to explain.
Don, the technology that you use now compared to maybe even just 5, 10, 15 years ago, is that allowing the breeding process to accelerate? And I would imagine the resources that Pioneer has, you're able to work through this process about as quick as anybody.
Yeah, that's right. The technology we use today, it is enabling us to take all the information we capture out in the field and all the information we know about from our germplasm. And when you think about that knowledge, that goes back 90 years in corn breeding, 40 years in soybean breeding. And so we got a lot of information there. And so we're able to basically take all that layered information and start to predict onto future generation or future germplasm we want to develop. And while that's not perfect, like Andy said, even with that advanced technology, 99% of what we do doesn't end up in a customer's field. But what we're seeing is that, the products we're bringing forward are step change better than the old way of doing it. And so it's enhancing our ability to find even better, more improved corn hybrids and soybean varieties faster. We still got to go through seed production and introduction to the customer in order to really get to a volume on a product. Those things haven't changed, but our ability to find better things quicker has. And it's really driven by the technology, the way we do it today.
Andy, let's transition to local testing. And if you could explain the Pioneer testing process and why it's important to the success of today's growers.
Right. And so we had mentioned earlier, that we have breeders spread throughout the regions in which we're actually breeding. And those breeders are surrounded by local teams in each of those areas. And so if you just pick any area, we'll take, I'm in Eastern Iowa, so we'll take Eastern Iowa as an example. The team that I work with out of Marion, Iowa, we're responsible for growing plots for both corn and soy throughout Eastern Iowa. And so we grow lots of different types of plots. We grow plots that are different sizes for ones that are more close, for evaluating hybrids that are closer to being commercialized, so we can get a better idea of how they'll act in larger fields. And then we'll grow plots all the way down to 1/500th of an acre, where we're really just growing as many different experimental hybrids in 1 acre, so we can measure them and see which ones potentially has a chance. So my group, my team that I get to work with here, we do amazing things in the spring and fall, because we're loading planters and tractors onto semi-trailers, and we're running up and down the eastern side of Iowa planting plots. And then again in the fall, we're loading combines onto semi-trailers and running up and down. And so, like the team I work with here, you're looking at, our team running 3 or 4 different planters planting research plots at any one day in the spring, and combines likewise in the fall. So there's a flurry of activity to get harvest done, both in time, but also, like we mentioned earlier, because we have another growing season in the winter time that we're trying to get decisions made, and then plant corn or soy again in winter nurseries in Mexico or Hawaii or somewhere like nice and warm.
Don, I'd imagine there are many synergies from the corn to the soybean side as far as that local testing, but what would you add to what Andy said?
Well, I think the benefits to our local testing scheme is what we learn in corn or in soybeans is information that we can share. So we don't, we're trying to consider all the variables that anyone is learning within the company. And so as we think about what we experience in corn breeding, and I'll give a specific example. There are sites or areas where corn breeders have found to be very beneficial for them to understand where to select new hybrids. And as a soybean breeder, I've paid close attention to that, because I know they have a lot more experience in those particular areas. And it helps me understand, well, if we're able to extract good information about corn hybrid breeding there, we should be able to extract good information about soybean breeding there. So again, back to that local testing, local knowledge, and sharing across our crop and breeding colleagues.
Yeah, and that's a key point, because we're not just testing on one soil type. I mean, we're really trying to understand and represent the regions that that our growers produce hybrids in. Sorry. So we're trying to make sure that we understand how products perform in all these different soil types and management systems.
Let's build off of that, Andy, starting with you then in Eastern Iowa in particular. What's unique about that area that helps you and helps the company from a plant breeding perspective?
Yeah. So, a lot about Eastern Iowa, as you move, when you talk about a lot, plant breeders have this really bad habit of dividing stuff by highways and interstates. And so, as you think of north of Highway 30 and north of 20, and you focus on what the Northeast Iowa grower needs, they are a little bit different. They may have needs for dual purpose hybrids, whether they're silage or not, for our dairy folks up in Northeast Iowa. Then you have just the maturity of the hybrids and the different types of soils, where you have more of the rolling hills in Northeast Iowa than you may have throughout Northwest Iowa, as an example. And then as you move into Southeast Iowa, those soils are just a little bit tougher. It's a little bit different. The closer you move to Missouri, the soils are a little bit less forgiving. And so it just takes a different type of hybrid, along with, some of those grower characteristics. And so certain growers prefer to grow corn on corn. They like growing corn. And so making sure that we focus on those type of management systems as well, where products can hold up for a couple of years on fields that have been in corn for a long time.
Don, what's unique about your geography in Illinois?
Well, I don't know if we're really unique, but one thing that we do really well is grow a lot of high yielding crops in northern Illinois. And that happens year over year. And so that's one key expectation out of our varieties that we develop is they have high yield potential. And then, the other thing that comes with all of those really productive soils and all of that rainfall that we can get is a lot of disease and a lot of agronomics. So that's a key focus for us on whether it's corn breeding or soybean breeding is high yield potential, but it's got to be able to stand up throughout the season and it needs to be able to defend itself and stay healthy till the end of the season.
Well, this has just been a great conversation. A huge thank you to our guest today for this Pioneer Harvest Hangout, Andy Ross, a Pioneer breeder and corn evaluation zone leader based in Iowa, and Don Kyle, also a Pioneer breeder on the soybean side and a soybean evaluation zone leader based in Illinois. Don, Andy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
I'm Mark Dorenkamp for Brownfield Ag News, and you've been watching a Pioneer Harvest Hangout.